when you lie down and you get that moment before the noise, when the noise stops, before you go to sleep, what keeps you up? Razzie says, it used to be, why didn't I do all that I planned today? Oh, good old guilt, right? Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm a list guy. Like I've shared these before. Like, I've got this list, and I got this list, and I've got, Post-it notes out the wazoo. I've got all these ideas floating around in my head. Like, I've now got a whiteboard there, and a whiteboard there, and a whiteboard there. I've got all these things that I want to accomplish, and all these ideas floating through my head, and all the ideas that I think are good or worth exploring. And I lie down at night, and I'm like, or actually worse, it's like 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and I'm like, I'm tired. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I go and I sit down and I go watch TV with the kids or something like that. Now, I've worked from 8 or 9 a.m. all the way till 9 p.m. So it's okay. I've done my diligence, but you still get that. But you could do one more thing. But you could do one more thing. Yeah, how do you let that go? I think for me, talk about what does the Bible say about stuff? I think it comes to when Paul's talking about Paul, Apollos, and Peter, where he says like, I planted the seed, Apollos watered it. Or you talk about the parable of, like, every parable with a farmer in it kind of thing. Or Jesus just simply saying, like, you plant the seed, but that's all you do. God sends the sun, God sends the rain, God makes it grow, God puts together the genetic makeup, God's the one that runs the weather. And so for me, I guess my question changed from, did I do enough today? Why didn't I do everything I was going to do? To, do I trust that even if I've forgotten 10 things, even if I'm not doing all the things that I want to do, even though I can't accomplish all these ideas in my head, do I trust that as long as I'm within God's will and just being where God wants me, that He'll grow it, that He'll take care of it, He will bless it, He will, make the seed blossom in His own time. That's a very freeing thought to me, because it allows me to go, okay, you know what? Did I do everything on the list? No. Did I have a bad day? No. Did I have a good day? It allows me to go, okay, regardless of my day, my emotions, my feelings, and what I've done, God takes care of it. Especially considering how many times I have done a bazillion things, gotten all excited about it, pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and that thing just cratered because I wasn't doing the right thing. I was pushing my own agenda, and then when I finally bumped into the thing God wanted me to do, all that work was done, all that work was gone. It's like it never even happened. I didn't need to do any of it. And so all that worrying and anxiety and frustration and stuff that I put together just so I could have this thing that I wanted to create ended up being meaningless anyway. It was just God wanted me to do this thing and walk faithfully. I turn to, I think about that verse again, the seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. What's the point of worrying? By worrying, can you add one more day to your life, one more hair to your head, anything? No, you can't. You can't. Your worries doesn't change reality. So therefore, do you trust that God's going to take care of it? Do you trust that if you've just tried to be good and righteous and that He can take care of the rest, right? So you've got, what power do we have anyway? We can't stop God's will from happening. All we can do is try to enter into it. At least that for me, that allows me to lie down at night and go, you know what? God, you got it. It says, how do you focus when you are in a mental tug of war? Kind of you to read or hear something biblical, think that's great, then a few hours later or the next day you're back in that horrible place again, overthinking when you hear some news, then think or hear or pray again for a short while, then later back into the dark thoughts again. I think that's I'll talk to you as a Christian because I know you are. That's a discipline. That is a willful choice of self-discipline, right? So, in other words, if you hear a promise from God, if you read something in the Bible that says, this is the truth, it brings you comfort and brings you peace in that moment. You go, okay, this is what God said. I believe this is true. I believe this is what the Bible says. I believe, or God spoke to me through this sermon or whatever. and then you get to that place where your brain, your body, your emotions, your biochemicals, your fatigue or whatever takes over, and the funk comes again. That's where the discipline of going, God has spoken. My feelings are not as valid as the word of God to me, who did come to me, who did talk to me, who did comfort me. And he said, this is the truth. This is what I believe. This is what I will do. This is how I'm comforting you. And you felt it. So the discipline comes in going, I choose to believe what happened before. I choose to believe the word of God. I choose to believe that when God met me in that moment, that it was not only real, but it was valid, and it was something that I can hold on to. That's what hope is, right? That's why we talk about faith. Hope is to go, I believe that what happened, my connection to God, what God did in the past, that word that God gave to me is true. And that faith, I will carry that with me. I will continue to use that faith, use that word, use that connection, regardless of how my emotions are, regardless of how the circumstances are, because God doesn't change. I'm the one that's changing. I'm the one that's doing this. God isn't. So when everything's going turbulent, I got to stand on the foundation and go, okay, what's the foundation? That comes with discipline and practice, right? So when you're lying there funk, and you just want to give up. It's taking that moment to go, what do I know about God? What is God's character like? Is he the truth? Does he tell the truth? What has he done for me? What does he believe about me? What did he do for me on the cross? How much does Jesus love me? And running through those things together works towards pulling you out of that funk, because part of it's just the devil and demons, or your own brain trying to convince you that God's not there and God's not present. Well, that's rather simple. Ask my dad and worry about him. Pace endless circles worrying about him. Yeah. And again, you should, because he is in a very delicate situation. Things are dire. There's responsibility on your shoulders, and you love him. It is perfectly valid for you to feel worried, to feel that you're anticipating something bad, because something bad can happen. I guess when it comes down to it is releasing control. Because part of what the pacing is for you to say, what can I do to fix this? What am I missing? What ways can I make this better? What ways can I take control? Sometimes you can't. It's completely out of your control. And you go, I have to let this go. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a surgeon. I'm not a healer. I'm not I'm not what he needs. I am just the kid, and I'm doing my best. So God, if you want to provide, provide. If you want to take. If you want to give. I trust that you know what to do. I refuse to take control. That at least helps you stop the pacing, because it allows you to say, okay, God, it's yours. And that's exactly what I was talking about with myself. With the finances, with the channel, all the rest of that. I had to come to that conclusion and just say, listen, I can't make this channel grow. I can't make the content great. I can't make people come. I can't make, anything. It has to be God. So I have to let go. Because I'm a pacer too. I'm sitting there chewing over 1,000 different ways where I'm getting it wrong, and all the ways that I need to change it. And sometimes I just get that impression that God goes, listen, man, you're trying to do my job. Let me do my job. You just do what I called you to do. Okay? And for you, that's just, serve your dad as best you can in love. Worry is what keeps me up. Yeah, worry is a big one. Worry and sadness. The sadness thing, I think, is, worry is one thing. Worry is that idea of, do I trust that God will take care of this situation in such a way that it will be done to my liking, right? That's kind of what worry is. It's, I have a desired outcome, and that desired outcome is going to be positive for me, and I think it's the right thing to do. So will God do that, or is it going to go another way? And then I, either cause more suffering or misery, or maybe, not come to be something that will help me or whatever. That's kind of where worry comes from. But the sadness thing, it's that to me is more of a permission. Is to because if it's, I shouldn't feel sad, I shouldn't feel miserable, why am I crying, I do this all the time, blah blah blah. It's to be able to say, if you've suffered a loss, if you have something in your life that is truly unjust or something beyond your control that is negative, right? To grieve that. I mean, look at the Psalms. Constantly throughout the Psalms, you have David saying, like, this is not fair. My enemies are against me. I'm not in the right place. God, it feels like you left me. You're far from me. And I'm like 100 Psalms like that, where David, throughout his life, this man after God's own heart, this, the king of Israel, this chosen one, wrote so many Psalms about feeling like God just left, that he just isn't there, and he isn't listening, and things are out of control. He doesn't know what to do. And I think that gives us permission to say, it's going to happen, and it's okay. You know what? It's okay to feel bad, and it's okay to feel sad, and it's okay to grieve, and it's okay to feel miserable. It's just what it means to be human in a sinful world. And then, if you read those, sadness Psalms, it gets to the end where most of the time, almost all the time, but most of the time, the end is, but I'll trust you. I trust your word. I trust you'll do the right thing. I trust that you'll be just. And I'll do what I can to follow you. Just tell me what I need to do, and I'll follow you. And so I think, for me, and I know this because I've suffered through like long-term depression. I've suffered through panic attacks. I've suffered through PTSD from abuse. I've got all this stuff that's inside of me. I was thinking the other day. You know how you ask the question, what do you want your superpower to be, right? It's all, fly, or I want to, have Professor X's, mental abilities or whatever. My secret one, the one that I keep in my head, I think, what if I had the ability to kind of like reverse empathy, where I could touch someone, if I touched their shoulder, they would feel the weight of fear and sadness that I have experienced in my life, right? There would finally be someone out there who understood exactly how, what I felt like, and just to see what would happen. It's a terrible thought. I totally get that this, because it's selfish, right? It's like nobody understands me. Nobody suffers as much as I do. Because if it went backwards and I felt what they had felt, it would probably, be like, wow, you're way worse off than I am. But usually, but for me, that idea of staying up at night, feeling the world's out of control, feeling pain from 22 years ago, reliving conversations from forever ago, worrying about the coming week, guilty about the previous week, just misery as before sleep comes. I've lived that, and I've lived it many times, and it never really goes away. Like I've got it pretty good right now, but it never really goes away. As far as it just becomes something that you learn how to process faster. Maybe is that the right way to put it? Is because even to this day, and I've said this before, to this day, if something bad happens, even a small thing, because I spent so much time suicidal, to this day, it becomes checkbox one on the list of ways to deal with it. Like I'd be like, okay, the printer doesn't work. Why don't we should just die. I have to, I immediately remove it. I eliminate it, but because it's like a rut in my brain, it's just always there. And you kind of go, no. But it hits, and what do you do with it? Well, it used to keep me up all night. It used to, sit there and, fantasize about how to do it, and fantasize about, what would happen, and all the people that would be messed up because of it, and how bad they'd feel, and blah, blah, blah. And now it comes and it goes. It comes in and I get rid of it, and it's done. So I think it's not necessarily that the emotions go away or the sadness depletes. Obviously, you can have the joy of the Lord. God can help you through that. Once you realize that He can make you more of a victor, that He starts using that sadness for the sake of the gospel and using that sadness to change people's lives, and you realize that he's not wasting what you went through, it's actually being used for good, and you're like, wow, this is amazing. Thank you, God, for allowing me to use the worst parts of my life to serve others so that they don't have to go through it, or so they don't have to go through it alone like I did. Like, you kind of go, wow, that's great, God. You can start feeling better about it. But it also ends up being sort of a reflexive muscle that you learn how to deal with, right? I'm going to lie down, and you just know. Sadness is going to come, and misery is going to be there, and negative thoughts are going to happen. I know it's coming. What am I doing? I guess you know it's coming, so you do the things beforehand that kind of are the protection. Like, don't drink a bunch of coffee before bed, so you're not up too late. You're actually tired. Make sure that you do your, whether it be exercise, or you do whatever you got to do, your nighttime routine, so that you're ready to go to sleep. Get off the phone. Stop watching the news. All the things that kind of get you stirred up that you don't need to do. Are you working your way to have this self-discipline to not do that? Might be a little behind, but for the question of the day, what keeps me up at night is people thinking I'm a horrible person and turning on me and treating me badly or pushing me away. So let me ask the question. Do you mean people that have done that and you having to deal with the results of it, or worrying people will do that? Which one are you talking about? A little of both? Okay, so again, it comes down to the first thing, all that the cognitive behavioral therapy stuff of making sure that you set yourself up for victory before you go to bed. But at the same time, I tell my kids this too, is that our brain is really good at making stuff up. So it's a constant fantasy factory, and what we put in is what we get out. So in other words, the fantasies and the data that our brain uses to create those fictional situations comes from somewhere, right? So if we're say we're worried about our romantic life, and we spend a whole lot of time watching either porn, bad obviously, but I'm saying like watching romantic comedies or romantic dramas or whatever, and we're filling our brain with all that stuff, it makes us miserable. That's what our fantasy life is going to be like, right? It's going to affect what our brain does with that. Whereas if you're worried about being afraid, like because you're worried about stuff in the world going bad, if you watch a bunch of news, or you watch a bunch of commentators who are negative, or you watch a bunch of like scary movies, or movies about the pandemic, that's what your fantasy life is going to look like. And so for you've got these things that have happened in the past, and they were difficult, they were hard to go through, you're still feeling the effects of them emotionally. I guess my question is, ask the question, how do you process that at night? How do you keep those night thoughts from going away? Is to ask the question, like, as you've dealt through this, like, have I forgiven? Have I sought to be forgiven, if that's the way it goes? Like, have I worked towards trying to make it as right as possible, if it's from my side, or for that matter, am I protected from them? And have I said, refuse to be bitter, refuse to be angry, just saying, God, you will make it just in that situation, working through that, whether that be counseling or whether that be, getting protection, like moving, whatever, that. But are you feeding the fantasy life to keep those emotions going? For example, watching movies about betrayal, or reading books about betrayal, or watching, having these things in your media and that you are constantly putting into yourself that kind of push that feeling out. Or could you find a different thing to fill? Like, example, to find stories about forgiveness, stories about patience, stories about reconciliation, stories about miracles that have happened where people have been able to get past these things, testimonies of people who have had just a bad time, but God has brought them out. You know what I mean? That's one thing. But at the same time, as I said, because we're good at fantasy, our brain is really good at convincing us of things. I guess it's the discipline of asking the question, how realistic is this? Right? And you'll know how realistic it is when you share it. This is something that again, you're going to hear this all the time from me, and that is to open up your mouth or open up your keyboard and to make it real by bringing it out of your brain, out of your spirit, out of your heart, into reality and shining light on it. So as you talk about, like for example, last night I was thinking, and you start saying out loud, my friend who I've been hanging out with for a long time and who knows me, I'm worried that for no reason they're going to all of a sudden get super mad at me, or they're going to think something about me that's not true, and they're going to believe it, and then they're going to throw me under the bus, and I won't be able to convince them otherwise, and they're going to be this, they're going to walk away from me, and I'll be so worried as to where they went, And as as all of a sudden you come out, you argue with yourself, and you're like, well, yeah, but if they're my friend, then they are going to talk to me. We have had these talks before, and I would reach out. I'd call them. That wouldn't happen, So as you make it real, as you bring it into reality, through words, through journaling, through text, through conversation with a counselor, through whatever, suddenly those fantasies, those worries, that difficulty deflates, and because you realize it's not that realistic. And as big as it was when it was inside of you, when you pulled it out, it becomes a lot smaller. I believe that really strongly. Through prayer, that's a big one. Because I'm worried my friend's going to betray me. I'm worried my friend's going to hurt me. I'm worried that the people who have hurt me in the past are going to find me again. Or I'm worried that the abuse that I suffered at the hands of these people, that I'm just the kind of person who people abuse, and that no matter where I go, it's what's going to happen. And so that makes me afraid. I'm afraid to make friends, and I'm afraid to meet new people, and I'm afraid to volunteer. And I feel this draw. I want to have friends. I want to connect with people. I want to have fun with everyone. I know what it's like, and I know not everybody's horrible, but I'm so scared of doing that. It's preventing me from being able to move. God, I don't know how to get over this. When you start bringing it out, and then you talk to a pastor, you talk to a friend, you talk to someone who is safe, and it takes the bigness of it away. And believe me, I don't know your exact situation, but I can't say this. I'm in that situation now. So I went from an abusive church that literally almost killed me, to a sick church, a dying church, like a church that had some real problems in it. That they were wonderful for a while, and then as we grew and as things happened that were good, Satan started pushing all the buttons in the congregation, and there were people who just hammered me. And there was nothing that could stop them. They wouldn't play by the rules. They were gossiping and slandering, and whenever you called them on it, they wouldn't come, and they wouldn't do the meeting, and they would just became horrible upon horrible upon horrible. And now I'm part of this new church, right? It's been a year and a bit since I was even at the last church. Now I'm in this new church, and I sat down just the other day, and a guy was sitting in front of me wearing a hat. He had it on backwards for whatever reason, sitting in church with his hat on backwards. And it was the company owned by the person that hurt me the most at the last church. It was a hat from them. And they sat right in front of me, and all of a sudden it was like I was right back, right? That person, this person's a threat. They're going to hurt me. There's bad things that are going to happen. I got to get out of here. Like, well, no, it's just a hat. Probably, And so because I believe in bringing it out into the light, I said, okay. I said to the pastor, I sent him an email. Dear pastor, you are great. I like you. You know me. We've been pastoring together for the last 7 years. Here's the thing. Every time I come to church, I'm scared. I'm on edge. I have I have a fight or flight that's making me want to jump out of there. It's like I'm sitting in a room full of people who are potential abusers, and I don't know who's going to strike first. And I know that's crazy, and I know that you got so many lovely people, and that you're awesome, and that you wouldn't let bad stuff like that happen. But I want you to know the reason why I bail after church sometimes, the reason why I'm not, jumping up and volunteering, the reason why I'm not coming to see how I can help and any of that stuff is because I am scared, and I'm trying to work my way in slow. So I hope you understand, it's not personal. And within, a day or whatever, the pastor got back to me and just said, I know where you're at. I felt, he used the term, I like the term, sheep bites. He says, I know what sheep bites feel like too. No pressure, no nothing. Glad you're there. We should talk sometime. He didn't say, that's dumb. Why would you do that? We're great. Defend himself. He just said, I know where you're at. And I totally give you permission to feel scared. And that's okay. I'm a safe person. If you want to talk, I'm here to talk, but there's no pressure. And I'll tell you what, that helped immensely, because now I didn't feel the guilt and the fear on top of, all the stuff that I was feeling in church, because I always felt like I was just kind of, not being thankful for this amazing church. But yeah, it's I strongly believe in opening it up. So I think if that helps at all, and I know everybody's different, but don't let it fester. Don't let it fester in your heart, in your mind. Don't let it be the grow and grow and grow inside of you. Bring it out. Tell people. Tell someone. Not only God, but tell people that you trust. And it helps. It helps a lot. I put a lot of weight in people's opinions of me, and I don't know why. Growing up, if I wasn't liked, I wasn't included or embraced or welcomed by other people, it made a very dark times for me. That's how it always was in school and church circles. In college, I had a close friend who at some point down the line seemed to suddenly flip a switch, and everything I said or did was scrutinized or held against me, and it felt like I couldn't do anything right by her. No matter how many times we talked it out, it always seemed like she was angry at me or resentful about times I had to take time away from her to prioritize other things in life. Eventually, it boiled down to a big talk where I felt like she was blaming me for everything, and I ended the friendship and blocked her on everything. And I've had another friend who, when she heard about things I'd take a stance on in my faith-based beliefs, immediately cut me out of her life. And now I'm trying to enter a romantic relationship for the first time in many years, and it's bringing nothing but anxiety and fear in me that he's going to flip a switch and decide I'm an awful person like the others have. That's real. Rusty, your first part of your story of being rejected in school, not having friends, people betray you. You know my story. If you've heard my testimony, you know that I didn't have friends growing up. I didn't like the people who my quote unquote best friend was the guy who literally would push me out of the way when it came time to for someone to come down the hallway. Like he didn't want to be acknowledged, my friend. Like it was bad. People threw rocks. It was bad. Okay. So I get the assumption of betrayal that will happen. That there are people who will. You can't trust anybody because everybody's going to let you down. And then when I did have a romantic relationship with someone, they did. I thought it was going well, and then now it became difficult. And so entering in a second time into another relationship like that, trying to find someone who will not do that, it's always a risk. I will say this though, that other people also have baggage. I think if you're like me, you come from the perspective that other people are put together, other people are honest, other people have it, when they speak, you can believe what they say. Other people are generally trying to be good and be nice people. It's me who has the issues, me who has difficulty with being honest, or me that has all these problems, and I'm the unstable element. It took a long time for me to come to the realization that other people in this world are liars. Other people have major fears and anxieties. Other people have hidden sins, hidden addictions, and things that they will not tell us. Like, if we think that there are that everything that we do is what's affecting the relationship. It took me a while, but start to realize that actually the other side can be a mess too, and we can get swept up in their sin. We can get swept up in there. So they're selfish. They're unkind. They're addicted. Their fantasy life is a mess. They are in debt up to their eyeballs, but they're not saying anything. They're jealous. And then all of a sudden, we wonder why it blew up. What did we do? What happened? What did we do to contribute to this? And the answer is nothing. Actually, that person had the problem. That person was a mess. That person had all the secret sin, and we just got swept into it, right? And other people sometimes have a bad day. That's a good point, Ledgate. I need to remember that so I don't interpret every action as dependent on me or other people's opinion of me. And that's exactly it too. Like, if other people suddenly snap at you or they're all of a sudden upset, like, it doesn't have to be, wow, what did I do? It could easily be they're having a bad day. And I'll just move on. What would I want people to do if I was having a bad day and snapped at someone? Well, I'd want them to let it go, obviously. So let it go. I think for me, that realization that other people aren't perfect, sometimes I'm not wrong, that was a big deal. And so when it comes to jumping into into another relationship, it's got all the inherent risks, but you've learned so much. You know yourself so much better. You know how to how to talk now. You know to have those conversations up front, to lay it out before and just kind of listen. Hey, you know what? I care about you and I want to get to know you better. I've got this baggage. So if I start coming off as whatever, don't take it. Call me on my crap, and I'll absolutely figure that out. But at the same time, recognize that other person may not be exactly honest all the time either, and so being smart about it, being wise about it, being intelligent about it is part of it too. All relationships are a risk, but I will say that not all relationships are dangerous and horrible. There are a lot of really nice people out there that we refuse to say hello to, we refuse to connect with because of our baggage, and that's on us.